Maya Rodriguez had learned to carry an umbrella everywhere, not because she checked weather forecasts religiously, but because life had taught her to prepare for storms she couldn't predict. On that particular Tuesday morning in downtown Portland, as she hurried toward the bus stop with her 5-year-old daughter Sophia's hand clasped tightly in hers, she had no idea that her simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives forever. The rain had started as a gentle mist, but within minutes it became a torrential downpour that sent business people scrambling for cover under storefronts and awnings. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had always been the kind of person who noticed others before herself. It came naturally to someone who had spent the last 6 years raising Sophia alone, working double shifts at the downtown medical clinic while studying accounting at night school. She had developed an almost supernatural awareness of her surroundings, a survival skill that helped her navigate the challenges of single motherhood in an expensive city where every dollar mattered and every opportunity had to be seized. As they approached the covered bus stop, Maya spotted him immediately. A tall man in an expensive-looking gray suit stood pressed against the building's wall, his shoulders hunched against the driving rain. His dark hair was plastered to his head, and water dripped steadily from his nose and chin onto what was clearly a very expensive briefcase. He looked completely miserable and utterly unprepared for the weather that had caught half the city off guard that morning. What struck Maya most wasn't his obvious discomfort, but the way he kept checking his phone with increasingly frantic gestures, his face growing more anxious with each passing moment. She could see the stress lines around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched as he stared at the screen. Something important was clearly going wrong in his day, and the unexpected storm was only making it worse. Sophia tugged at her mother's coat sleeve and pointed at the man. "Mama, he's getting really wet," she whispered with the kind of innocent concern that only children possess. Maya looked down at her daughter's earnest brown eyes, then back at the stranger who seemed to be having one of those days where everything goes wrong at once. Without overthinking it, Maya approached him. "Excuse me," she said, raising her voice slightly over the sound of rain hammering against the pavement. "Would you like to share our umbrella? You're soaking wet, and it doesn't look like this rain is going to stop anytime soon." The man looked up, surprised. His eyes were a striking green, the kind that seemed to hold depths of worry and exhaustion that went far beyond concern about getting wet. For a moment, he seemed almost suspicious of her offer, as if kindness from strangers was so rare in his world that he didn't quite know how to process it. "I don't want to impose," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Maya couldn't quite place. "You and your daughter need it more than I do." Maya smiled, the kind of warm, genuine smile that had gotten her through countless difficult days. "It's big enough for 3, and besides, my daughter is very worried about you. She has strong opinions about people not getting rained on when they don't have to." Sophia nodded solemnly, as if this were indeed a matter of great moral importance. The man's expression softened as he looked at the little girl, and for the first time since Maya had noticed him, he almost smiled. "Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint such a thoughtful young lady," he said, stepping closer to them. As he moved, under the umbrella's protection, Maya caught a faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with rain, and she noticed that despite being drenched, there was something unmistakably refined about him. His suit, though soaked, was clearly tailored, and his leather shoes were the kind that cost more than Maya made in a month. They stood together in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the rain create rivers in the street gutters. The man continued to check his phone, but his agitation seemed to have diminished slightly now that he wasn't being pelted by water. "I'm Maya," she said finally, adjusting the umbrella to make sure he was fully covered. "And this is Sophia. It's very nice to meet you both," he replied, though he didn't immediately offer his own name. "I can't tell you how grateful I am for this. I have a very important meeting in 20 minutes, and showing up looking like a drowned rat wouldn't." exactly inspire confidence. Maya glanced at his still dripping suit and bit back a smile. Well, you're definitely less drowned rat-like now than you were 5 minutes ago. That's progress. He actually chuckled at that, a sound that transformed his entire face. Progress indeed. Though I'm afraid my presentation notes weren't quite as fortunate as I was. He held up his phone, and Maya could see water droplets trapped under the screen protector. Oh no, Maya said with genuine sympathy. How important was what was on there? Important enough that this could be the difference between saving or losing something I've worked on for 3 years, he said, then immediately looked like he regretted sharing so much personal information with a stranger. But Maya didn't pry further. She recognized the look of someone carrying weight they couldn't easily share, and she respected that boundary. Instead, she said, well, sometimes things have a way of working out, even when they seem impossible. You never know what's going to happen next. The man studied her face for a moment, as if he were trying to memorize it. There was something in his expression that Maya couldn't quite read, something that went beyond gratitude for shelter from the rain. Just then, the bus arrived with a loud hiss of air brakes and a spray of water from the puddle near the curb. Maya began to collapse the umbrella, shaking off the excess water. This is us, she said. I hope your meeting goes well, despite the technical difficulties. Wait, he said quickly, reaching into his jacket pocket. Please, let me give you something for your kindness. Not everyone would stop to help a stranger. Maya shook her head firmly. Absolutely not. It was just an umbrella on a rainy day. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, he said quietly, his green eyes holding hers with unusual intensity. They really wouldn't have. As Maya and Sophia climbed onto the bus, the man called out, I didn't get to thank you properly. Maya turned back with Sophia's hand in hers. There's nothing to thank me for. Just pay it forward someday. Through the rain-streaked bus window, Maya watched the man standing alone under the building's awning, still looking in their direction. Even as the bus pulled away from the curb, something about the encounter stayed with her during the entire ride to Sophia's school, though she couldn't quite articulate what it was. There had been something almost familiar about him, as if she had seen him before, though she was certain they had never met. The rest of Maya's day proceeded with its usual controlled chaos. After dropping Sophia at elementary school, she rushed to her job at Riverside Medical Center, where she worked as a medical billing specialist. It was steady work that paid the bills and offered decent health insurance, but it wasn't exactly fulfilling. She spent her days navigating insurance claims and medical codes, helping patients understand their bills, and trying to make an impossibly complicated healthcare system slightly more manageable for people who were already dealing with illness or injury. Her supervisor, Janet, was a kind woman in her 50s who had taken Maya under her wing when she first started at the clinic. Janet had also been a single mother, though her children were now grown and starting families of their own. She understood the delicate balance Maya had to maintain between work, school, and raising Sophia. You're glowing today, Janet observed as Maya.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Settled at her desk with a cup of coffee that had already gone lukewarm during her commute. Good morning, Maya smiled, thinking about the stranger with the green eyes and expensive suit. Just had one of those moments that reminds you that people can surprise you. Those are the best kind of mornings, Janet said. Speaking of surprises, did you hear about the Henderson Foundation grant opportunity? Applications are due next month, and it's specifically for single mothers pursuing higher education. The award is substantial enough to cover tuition and living expenses for an entire year. Maya's heart skipped. She had been struggling to balance her accounting coursework with work and parenting, often staying up until 2 in the morning to complete assignments after Sophia had gone to bed. The financial strain of tuition, even at the community college level, was beginning to wear on their small family budget. How substantial are we talking? Maya asked, trying to keep the hope out of her voice. $50,000, Janet said quietly. Renewable for up to 2 years if you maintain your grades, and stay on track for graduation. Maya sat back in her chair, almost dizzy at the thought. $50,000 would change everything. She could cut back to part-time work and focus on her studies. She could spend more time with Sophia instead of juggling homework and bedtime stories simultaneously. She could finally see a clear path to the kind of career that would provide real security for her daughter's future. What's the catch? Maya asked, because in her experience, opportunities that seemed too good to be true usually were. No catch, really. You need to submit transcripts, financial information, an essay about your goals, and 3 letters of recommendation. The foundation apparently looks for candidates who demonstrate both academic potential and community involvement. Maya's heart sank slightly at the last requirement. Between work, school, and parenting, she barely had time for the basics, let alone volunteer work or community service. Her involvement in Sophia's school was limited to parent-teacher conferences and the occasional class party when she could get time off work. But then she thought about the morning's encounter, about the simple act of sharing an umbrella with a stranger. Maybe kindness counted as community involvement, even if it wasn't formally organized or officially documented. Maybe there were ways to serve others that didn't require committee meetings and scheduled volunteer hours. She spent her lunch break researching the Henderson Foundation online. It had been established 15 years ago by tech entrepreneur Marcus Henderson after his own single mother had struggled to complete her education while raising him and his sister. The foundation's mission was to remove financial barriers for parents pursuing higher education, with a particular focus on women in STEM fields and business. Maya read testimonials from previous recipients, women whose lives had been transformed by the opportunity to focus on their studies without the constant worry about rent money and grocery bills. Their stories resonated deeply with her own struggles and aspirations. As she read, Maya found herself thinking again about the man from the morning. There had been something about his accent, his bearing, his obvious wealth that had seemed familiar, though she still couldn't place where she might have encountered him before. Portland wasn't such a large city that she wouldn't recognize someone if she had met them previously, but perhaps she had seen him in the news or at some business event related to her work at the clinic. The afternoon brought its usual stream of patients with questions about their bills, insurance claims that needed to be resubmitted, and phone calls from providers trying to navigate payment issues. Maya prided herself on her ability to help people understand the financial side of their healthcare, to translate medical billing language into plain English, and to find solutions when systems seemed designed to create obstacles rather than provide assistance. Around 4 o'clock, as she was wrapping up a particularly complicated insurance dispute for an elderly patient who had been trying to get coverage for a necessary medication, Maya's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Riverside Medical Center. This is Maya. How can I help you? Ms. Rodriguez. The voice on the other end was professional, female, with a slight East Coast accent. This is Catherine Morrison from the Henderson Foundation. Do you have a few minutes to speak? Maya's heart began to race. She hadn't even submitted an application yet, let alone heard anything about the grant program beyond Janet's casual mention that morning. Of course, Maya said, though she felt suddenly nervous without knowing why. I'm calling because your name was brought to our attention as a potential candidate for our educational grant program. I understand you're currently pursuing an accounting degree while working full-time and raising a daughter on your own? Yes, that's correct, Maya said slowly, wondering how the Henderson Foundation had gotten her information. Though I haven't submitted an application yet. I only learned about the program this morning. I see, Catherine said, and Maya could hear papers rustling in the background. Well, someone was quite impressed with you and specifically recommended that we reach out. Would you be available to meet tomorrow afternoon to discuss the opportunity in more detail? Maya glanced at her calendar, mentally calculating childcare arrangements and work schedules. I could potentially meet after 5:30 once I've picked up my daughter from her after-school program. Actually, that works perfectly. Would it be possible for you to come to our downtown office around 6? And please, bring Sophia with you. We're very family-friendly here, and we'd love to meet her. Maya agreed to the meeting, though she spent the rest of the afternoon puzzling over how her name had come to the foundation's attention. She hadn't applied for any other scholarships recently, and she couldn't think of anyone in her network who had connections to major philanthropic organizations. That evening, as she helped Sophia with her homework at their small kitchen table, Maya found herself distracted by questions she couldn't answer. Who had recommended her for the grant? How had they even known about her circumstances? She had always been private about her financial struggles, sharing them only with Janet and a few close friends. Sophia noticed her distraction, as children often do. "Mama, you keep staring at nothing. Are you worried about something?" Maya smiled and smoothed her daughter's dark hair. "Not worried, exactly. Just thinking about some unexpected good news that might be coming our way." "Is it about the nice man with the wet suit?" Sophia asked with the kind of intuitive leap that always amazed Maya about her daughter's mind. "What makes you ask that? You've been different since this morning. Happy different, but also thinking hard different. Like when I give you a present, but you can't figure out why I made it for you." Maya laughed, struck by the accuracy of her 5-year-old's observation. "You're very smart. Do you know that?" "Everyone tells me I'm smart like my mama," Sophia said proudly, then returned to her math worksheet with the kind of focused concentration that suggested the conversation was finished from her perspective. But Maya continued to think about her daughter's words as they went through their evening routine of dinner, bath time, and bedtime stories. There was something about the morning's encounter that continued to nag at her, a sense that she was missing something important. The next day moved with unusual speed, perhaps because Maya was both anticipating and dreading the evening meeting at the Henderson Foundation. She had researched the organization more thoroughly and learned that it was one of the most prestigious educational foundations on the West Coast, with a reputation for changing lives and supporting exceptional candidates. The foundation's downtown office was located in a sleek glass building that Maya had walked past hundreds of times but never paid particular attention to. The lobby was modern and welcoming, with comfortable seating areas and large windows that let in the late afternoon light. Catherine Morrison met them at the elevator, a woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and a warm smile that immediately put both Maya and Sophia at ease. She had the kind of presence that suggested both competence and genuine interest in other people. "You must be Sophia," Catherine said, kneeling to Sophia's eye level. "I've heard wonderful things about you." Sophia, who was usually shy with strangers, surprised Maya by responding confidently. "Are you the lady who might help my mama go to school without being so tired all the time?" Catherine's smile widened. "I hope so. That's definitely what we're here to talk about." The foundation's offices were impressive but not intimidating, with artwork that suggested creativity and innovation rather than corporate formality. Catherine led them to a conference room with a view of the city and a small table set up with coloring books and crayons for Sophia. "Before we get into the details of the grant program," Catherine said as they settled into comfortable chairs, "I'd love to hear about your goals. What are you hoping to accomplish with your accounting degree?" Maya had practiced this kind of answer for job interviews and school applications, but something about Catherine's genuine interest made her want to give a more honest response than her usual polished talking points. "I want to provide real security for Sophia," she said. "Right now, we're getting by, but there's no cushion. If I get sick, or if childcare falls through, or if any of a dozen small emergencies happen, we're in trouble. An accounting degree would give me access to jobs with better pay, better benefits, and more stability." "But beyond the practical considerations," Catherine prompted. Maya was quiet for a moment, watching Sophia carefully color what appeared to be a rainbow-filled landscape. "I think I'd be good at it. I've always been good with numbers and details, and I like helping people solve problems. At the clinic where I work now, I spend a lot of time helping patients understand their bills and figure out payment options. There's something satisfying about taking complicated information and making it useful for people." Catherine nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of perspective we look for in our candidates. People who see education not just as personal advancement, but as a way to serve others better. They talked for nearly an hour about Maya's academic progress, her work experience, and her long-term career goals. Catherine was particularly interested in Maya's volunteer work with a local literacy program, something Maya had started the previous year when Sophia's teacher mentioned that many parents in their school district struggled to help their children with reading homework. I noticed that you haven't officially applied for our grant yet, Catherine said eventually. But I'd like to expedite your application process if you're interested. We have a special funding track for candidates who come to our attention through personal recommendations from our board members. Board members? Maya asked, confused. I don't understand. I don't know anyone who serves on nonprofit boards. Catherine smiled mysteriously. Sometimes we make impressions on people without realizing it. Someone was quite taken with your character and specifically asked us to consider you for our program. Before Maya could ask for more details, Catherine's phone buzzed with what appeared to be an urgent message. She glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted to something like excitement mixed with anticipation. Actually, Catherine said, I believe your advocate would like to meet with you personally, if you have a few more minutes this evening. Maya looked at Sophia, who was completely absorbed in her coloring and seemed content to stay occupied with the art supplies Catherine had provided. I suppose we could stay a little longer, but I don't want to keep Sophia up too late on a school night. Of course, this will just take a few minutes, I promise. Catherine stepped out of the conference room, and Maya could hear her speaking quietly to someone in the hallway. When she returned, she was accompanied by a familiar figure that made Maya's heart skip several beats. It was the man from the bus stop, though now he was dry and impeccably dressed in a different suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. His green eyes held the same intensity she remembered, but now there was also something like nervousness in his expression. Maya, he said quietly, I'd like you to meet Marcus Henderson. For a moment, Maya couldn't process what she was hearing. Marcus Henderson, the Henderson Foundation, the billionaire tech entrepreneur whose rags to riches story she had read about just the day before. The man whose mother had struggled as a single parent, inspiring him to create one of the most generous educational foundations in the country. And she had shared her umbrella with him at a bus stop. Sophia looked up from her coloring and recognized him immediately. It's the wetsuit man, she announced cheerfully. Did you have a good meeting yesterday? Did your phone get fixed? Marcus Henderson, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the Pacific Northwest, crouched down to Sophia's level with a gentle smile. I did have a good meeting. Thank you for asking. And my phone is working perfectly now. But more importantly, I've been thinking about you and your mother ever since yesterday morning. He straightened and looked at Maya with an expression that was part gratitude, part something deeper that she couldn't quite identify. When I got caught in that rainstorm yesterday, I was having one of the worst days I'd experienced in years. A deal I'd been working on for 3 years was falling apart. I was running late for the most important meeting of the quarter, and then the weather decided to add insult to injury. Maya found her voice finally. You said it was important enough to make the difference between saving or losing 3 years of work. It was, and it did. Marcus sat down across from her, his posture more relaxed than it had been the previous day. But what happened next was even more important. A stranger with no reason to help me, no knowledge of who I was or what I was dealing with, took time out of her morning to make sure I wasn't miserable. And when I offered to pay her for her kindness, she refused and told me to pay it forward. Instead, Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was just an umbrella. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Marcus said firmly, echoing almost exactly what he had said the day before. They wouldn't have. Do you know how many people walked past me that morning before you stopped? Dozens. And not one of them made eye contact, let alone offered to help. He pulled out his phone, which Maya noticed was indeed working perfectly now, and showed her a photo from what appeared to be a business meeting. That meeting I was so worried about? It went better than I could have imagined. But the entire time, I kept thinking about what you said about things having a way of working out, and about paying kindness forward. Catherine had been watching. This exchange with obvious satisfaction. Marcus came to me yesterday afternoon with very specific instructions. He wanted us to find a way to support your education that wouldn't feel like charity, but like the kind of investment and potential that our foundation exists to make. But how did you even find me? Maya asked, still struggling to process the situation. Marcus looked slightly embarrassed. I may have asked my assistant to check with the city's transportation department about bus routes from that particular stop. And then we may have called several medical facilities in the area until we found someone who knew a Maya Rodriguez with a 5-year-old daughter. That's either very sweet or very stalkerish, Maya said, and immediately regretted the bluntness of her response. But Marcus laughed, a sound that filled the conference room with genuine warmth. I was hoping for sweet, but I understand if it comes across as the other thing. I promise my intentions are entirely honorable. I just couldn't stop thinking about meeting someone who embodies exactly the kind of values my mother raised me to appreciate. Sophia had been listening to this adult conversation with the kind of intense focus that suggested she understood more than the grown-ups might expect. Mama, she said solemnly, I think the nice man wants to help us because you were nice to him. That's how nice works. Out of the mouths of babes, Maya thought. Her 5-year-old had just summarized a situation that had left the adults dancing around its implications for 20 minutes. Sophia's right, Marcus said. Though I'd like to help not just because you were kind to me, but because after researching your background, I believe you're exactly the kind of person our foundation exists to support. Single mothers pursuing education while raising children and contributing to their communities represent some of the most resilient and determined people in our society. Catherine spread several documents across the table. What we're proposing is a full scholarship that would cover not just tuition, but also living expenses, childcare costs, and educational materials. The grant would be renewable for up to 3 years, with the only requirements being that you maintain satisfactory academic progress and participate in our mentorship program. Maya stared at the paperwork, trying to process numbers that seemed impossibly large. This is too much. I mean, I'm grateful beyond words, but this feels like more than helping someone who shared an umbrella. Maya, Marcus said gently, yesterday morning you saw a stranger having a difficult day and you chose to help without expecting anything in return. That simple act of kindness changed the entire trajectory of my day and possibly my year. But more than that, it reminded me why I created this foundation in the first place. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city where both of them had started their day so differently just 24 hours before. My mother worked 3 jobs to support my sister and me while she studied to become a nurse. She used to tell me that success wasn't measured by what you accumulated, but by how many people you lifted up along the way. Yesterday, you lifted me up when I needed it most. This grant isn't charity. It's an investment in someone who already demonstrates the values we want to support. Sophia had finished her coloring and came over to stand beside Maya's chair. Does this mean you won't have to stay up so late doing homework? She asked with the kind of practical concern that made Maya's heart ache. It might mean exactly that, Maya said, stroking her daughter's hair while trying not to cry in front of these relative strangers who were offering to change their lives. Catherine pulled out a tablet and began walking Maya through the application process, which had been streamlined to require only the most essential documentation. We can have everything processed within the week if you decide to accept the offer. If I decide. Maya looked around the room at faces that were watching her with expectation and kindness. Are you joking? Of course I accept. This is the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was praying. The next hour was spent reviewing paperwork, discussing logistics, and planning the transition that would allow Maya to reduce her work schedule and focus primarily on her studies. Marcus had to leave for another meeting, but not before giving Sophia a small gift, a children's book about weather that he said he had chosen because it reminded him of their morning together. I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other again soon, he told Maya as he prepared to leave. The foundation holds quarterly events for our scholarship recipients, and I make it a point to attend whenever possible. I still can't quite believe this is real, Maya admitted. It's real, Marcus assured her. And it's exactly what's supposed to happen when good people cross paths at the right moment. As they rode the bus home that evening, Sophia chattered excitedly about the nice man and the coloring lady and the big building with the pretty windows. Maya listened with half her attention while the other half tried to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "How did the meeting go? I've been thinking about you all afternoon." Maya typed back, "I think our lives just changed completely. I'll tell you everything tomorrow." That night, after Sophia had gone to bed with her new book about weather patterns and cloud formations, Maya sat at their small kitchen table with a cup of tea and tried to write in the journal she had been keeping sporadically since starting school. How did you capture a day like this in words? How did you explain that sharing an umbrella with a stranger had led to an opportunity that would transform everything? She thought about the concept of paying kindness forward, something that had seemed like a nice platitude when she said it, but had apparently taken on much deeper meaning for Marcus Henderson. Maya had grown up believing that you helped people when you could simply because it was the right thing to do, not because you expected anything in return. The idea that such a small gesture could have such profound consequences was both humbling and slightly overwhelming. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was her mother, calling from the small town where Maya had grown up, where news traveled fast and family members somehow always knew when something significant was happening. Mija. Her mother's voice was warm with affection and curiosity. "I had the strangest feeling today that I should call and check on you and Sophia. Is everything all right?" Maya smiled, thinking about the mysterious ways that people who love each other sometimes sense important moments from across distances. "Everything is more than all right, Mama. In fact, something incredible happened today, and I can't wait to tell you about it." She spent the next 30 minutes recounting the previous 2 days, from the rainy morning encounter to the evening meeting at the Henderson Foundation. Her mother listened with the kind of attention that only mothers possess, asking questions that showed she understood not just the practical implications of the scholarship, but the emotional significance of being recognized and supported in such an unexpected way. "Your father would be so proud," her mother said quietly when Maya finished her story. "He always said that kindness was the most important thing we could teach you, and that it would come back to you in ways you never expected." Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of her father, who had died when Sophia was just a baby. He had been a man who helped neighbors without being asked, who fixed things for people who couldn't afford repairs, who believed deeply in the power of small gestures to make the world a better place. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if I had just walked past him yesterday morning," Maya said. "If I had been in a hurry, or if I had decided it wasn't my responsibility to help a stranger." "But you didn't walk past him," her mother pointed out. "Because that's not who you are. You stopped and helped because that's what good people do. The fact that it led to this opportunity doesn't change the goodness of the original gesture. It just means the world has a way of recognizing kindness when it sees it." Over the following days, word of Maya's scholarship spread through her small network of friends, co-workers, and fellow students. The responses were universally positive, though Maya detected undertones of amazement in some people's reactions, as if they couldn't quite believe that such good fortune could happen to someone they actually knew. Janet was particularly thrilled, having been the one to mention the Henderson Foundation grant in the first place. "I've been working with struggling single mothers for 15 years, she said during their lunch break a few days after Maya's meeting with the foundation. "I've seen how hard it is to balance everything you're juggling, and I've watched too many brilliant women give up on their dreams because the system makes it nearly impossible to succeed. What happened to you gives me hope for all of them." Maya's professors at the community college were equally supportive when she explained her situation and her plans to transition to full-time student status. Her accounting instructor, Professor Williams, had been particularly encouraging about her academic potential and was excited to hear that she would be able to focus more completely on her studies. "You're one of those students who makes teaching worthwhile," Professor Williams told her after class the following week. You ask thoughtful questions, you apply concepts to real-world situations, and you help other students understand material they're struggling with. Having you in class full-time will be a gift to everyone. The transition wasn't without its logistical challenges. Maya had to negotiate a reduced schedule with the medical clinic, arrange new childcare options for Sophia, and adjust their daily routine to accommodate her increased class load. But these were the kinds of problems she was grateful to have, complications that arose from opportunity rather than crisis. Marcus had been true to his word about staying connected to the Foundation's scholarship recipients. He sent periodic emails asking about Maya's progress, sharing articles he thought might interest her, and extending invitations to networking. Events that brought together scholarship students, business leaders, and community activists. Their first formal meeting after the initial scholarship award was at a foundation-sponsored breakfast for new recipients. Maya arrived early, nervous about meeting other scholarship students and uncertain about what was expected of her in this new role. She needn't have worried. The other women in the program came from diverse backgrounds, but shared similar experiences of balancing education, work, and family responsibilities while pursuing dreams that sometimes seemed impossibly out of reach. There were aspiring doctors, teachers, engineers, and social workers, all united by determination and supported by the Foundation's belief in their potential. Marcus spoke to the group about the importance of not just accepting support, but finding ways to extend it to others. The women in this room represent an investment in the future, he said, but the return on that investment isn't measured in individual success alone. It's measured in the impact you'll have on your families, your communities, and the people whose lives you'll touch throughout your careers. After the formal presentation, Marcus approached Maya with a smile that seemed genuinely pleased to see her. How are you adjusting to the new schedule? Is Sophia adapting well to the changes? She loves having me home more often, Maya said. Though she did ask me yesterday if being less tired made me a different mama, or if I was still the same mama, but with more energy for bedtime stories. Marcus laughed. And what did you tell her? That I was definitely the same mama, just with more time to appreciate how amazing she is. They talked for a few more minutes about Maya's classes, her career goals, and her growing involvement in a financial literacy program for low-income families that the Foundation supported. Marcus listened with the kind of attention that made Maya feel like her thoughts and experiences mattered, not just as a scholarship recipient, but as a person whose perspective had value. As the months passed, Maya found herself thinking less about the remarkable coincidence that had brought her and Marcus together, and more about the opportunities that continued to unfold as a result of their meeting. The scholarship had opened doors she hadn't known existed, connecting her with mentors, internships, and professional networks that would have been impossible to access on her own. But perhaps more importantly, the experience had reinforced her belief in the power of small kindnesses and unexpected connections. She found herself more aware of opportunities to help others, more willing to offer assistance even when she was busy or preoccupied, and more confident that her actions, however small, could make a meaningful difference in someone's day. One afternoon, as she was leaving campus after a particularly challenging exam, Maya noticed an elderly man struggling to change a flat tire in the parking lot. His hands were shaking, whether from age or frustration, and he kept dropping the lug wrench as he tried to loosen the bolts. Without thinking about it, Maya approached him and offered to help. She had learned basic car maintenance out of necessity as a single mother, and she was able to quickly assess the situation and provide the assistance he needed. The man was grateful beyond words, explaining that his wife was waiting for him at home and would worry if he was late. As Maya finished tightening the spare tire, the man asked how he could repay her kindness. She smiled, thinking of Marcus Henderson and their conversation about paying kindness forward. Just help someone else when you get the chance, she said. That's payment enough. Driving home that evening, Maya reflected on how naturally the phrase had come to her, and how much her perspective on kindness and community had evolved since that rainy morning when she had shared her umbrella with a stranger. She was beginning to understand that kindness wasn't just about individual acts of generosity, but about creating a culture where helping others was the expected response to need rather than the exception. Sophia, now in first grade and thriving, with the increased stability that the scholarship had provided, had also absorbed lessons about kindness and community service. She regularly volunteered to help her teacher with classroom tasks and had developed a reputation for befriending new students who seemed lonely or overwhelmed. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.